Well, thank you very much for that very warm introduction there. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. It's good to be with you. I understand that after I get done speaking, you're all going home, so I'll try and be very, very brief, because I know you probably want to get home. But it's good to be back here at AIC, and I want to thank the administration for once again holding this model Congress. You know, AIC has been an institution in this city for many, many years, going back to the 1800s, and they have produced many fine students, many fine public servants, and they are certainly a credit to Springfield and to Massachusetts and to the entire country. So we've got something very special here at AIC, and you should enjoy it and honor it and respect what they do, because they've meant a lot to this region. As mentioned, I received a degree here from AIC when I was mayor. It was kind of interesting because I went to Springfield College too, right down the road. And having a degree from Springfield, an education from AIC, as I used to say. Got a degree from Springfield and an education from AIC. So as a politician, when I went to Springfield, I said, you know, I got a degree from AIC, but I got an education from Springfield. So Dick Flynn, the president at Springfield College, realized what I was doing, and he gave me an honorary degree to end the debate. It's one way to get an honorary degree. It's not the best way, but it is one way to get an honorary degree. So let me just say that this little exercise here, the Model Congress, I think you're going to reflect upon for many years. And you'll see that this high school experience is something you're going to remember for many years. I remember my senior year, right down the street at Long Meadow High School. I don't want to necessarily tell you the date, it's a couple years behind you. But I'll tell you what happened that year. It was 1968. It was April of 1968. And I was just leaving baseball practice at Long Meadow High School. And got the word that Martin Luther King had been assassinated. In June of that year, as I was preparing to take my English final to go on to college, I got the word from my father that Robert Kennedy had been assassinated in California after winning the Democratic primary for president. Same year. This comes after, of course, the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963 by the lone gunman Lee Harvey Oswald, if you want to believe your government, which I don't. And Vietnam was in full gear. The Vietnam War, 58,000 of our young people across the country dying for war in Vietnam for reasons, I guess, our United States government wanted to stop communism. To stop communism. We chose Vietnam to stake our battleground, and all the young people we lost. What a shame. What a shame. So, it was a pretty interesting time to be a high school senior. It was very interesting. And I'm not sure we've had a time like that since. And if you look at what's going on today, not a lot has really changed, has it? We're fighting a war in Afghanistan? Really? We're fighting terrorism in Afghanistan. Just wound down a war in Iraq because there were weapons of mass destruction there. You don't remember that? And how many young people we lost there in Afghanistan? We're still fighting for civil rights, as Martin Luther King was doing. You know, in those days, it was discrimination against people of color. People were not allowed to vote. Today, we're fighting about marriage equality. That is the civil rights battle of today. And we'll see how the Supreme Court decides that issue this coming session. So, not a whole lot has really changed relative to war and to civil rights. One thing has changed. We have a dysfunctional Congress. In the old days, in the 60s, at least we had the ability to get along. Yes, we were divided between party lines, but there always seemed to be a resolution to the issue at hand. Today, we're dysfunctional. The fiscal cliff is a perfect example of that. We're not over the cliff yet. We'll see what happens in the next few months, but do you really think that it's going to be resolved? by the United States Congress? We are so divided in this country. It's unfortunate. And one of the lessons I'll bring to you, and hopefully the messages, is that there are going to be differences of opinion. You know that by debating the issues that you debated this weekend. You know that. But it's essential for you to come together in the end and find a common ground. Now, you don't have to win every issue. You don't have to compromise your principles. I'm a liberal. I'm a Kennedy liberal, very proud of it. That doesn't mean I'm right on all the issues. You know, I have friends that are right-wing conservatives. And we fight like cats and dogs. But it seems to me that we should be able to come to middle ground, whether you are way to the left or way to the right, for the betterment of a city, of a state, or a nation. And that really is a challenge to you, because you can do much better than my team has done. Much, much better. We should not be in this divide that we have in this country today because people want to stick to their principles. Well, we all have principles. But we all have to come to the middle to reach that common ground to move the country ahead. In talking earlier, I was a little bit surprised that there were no bills to deal with gun control debated over the weekend. Little surprised. And somewhat fascinated, because this whole issue, that's tragedies that have gone on across the country, the latest in Newtown, is so tragic. You know, as I grew up in that era, as I told you about, losing a president, a civil rights leader, United States senator, you would think that something would change in America. You would think. But unfortunately, the special interests, especially the National Rifle Association, the NRA, has gotten into politicians' pockets by campaign contributions. They have gotten into the Congress in terms of legislation, and they are controlling the national agenda. So, even though we lost 20 little innocent first graders and 6 superior educators right down the road in Newtown, here's my prediction for you, that nothing is going to happen in Congress relative to controlling assault weapons. Nothing. No matter what the Vice President does, no matter what the President says, Congress in the end will not respond because of the special interest of the National Rifle Association. Trust me on that. I've been fighting for sensible gun control since 1976, a little before your time. We had a referendum in Massachusetts that year. It was called People versus Handguns. And the big issue of the day in 1976 was trying to ban those cheap Saturday night specials with a barrel head of less than 3 inches. That was the big issue then, because those were the weapons that were killing people. And the National Rifle Association said, no, you can't do that. That's the first step towards confiscation of weapons. Really? The first step. When I became mayor, one of my first acts, an ordinance I introduced, to have trigger locks on all guns, all weapons in Springfield. Trigger locks. Now, do you know the National Rifle Association came down from their national headquarters to Springfield, Massachusetts to fight against trigger locks? Really? And you know what their argument was? It's the first step toward government coming in to confiscate everyone's weapons. Wow. Isn't that an interesting argument? Did you see the president of the National Rifle Association come before the American public after Newtown? You see what he said? This is the great trick in politics. It's called the head fake. Anybody play basketball? You know what a head fake is? You know, you move your head to the left and you go to your right. It's a head fake. Well, we have it in politics too. So Wayne LaPierre, the president of the National Rifle Association, comes down and he says, you know, the tragedy in Newtown, I understand, but it's not about guns. It's about school safety. Really? School safety. So now the president of the NRA wants to put weapons in the hands of teachers in the name of school safety. I think he misses the point. I think. Does anybody in this room really think that more guns are necessary to make our schools safer? Do you? You do.
Mike definitely does.
Okay, Mike. Have you read the Second Amendment lately? Have you? Let me just read it to you. Now, I'm not a legal scholar, and I'm not an English major, but listen to this. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A well-regulated militia. This was written in 1787. We didn't have the Army, we didn't have the Navy. The militia was us. Now we have all of that. Does anybody actually believe you have an absolute right to a weapon? An assault weapon with a maximum capacity, 100 rounds? And of course the NRA will say, well, if you take those away, it's the first step towards confiscation. And we need our weapons for hunting. You really need an assault weapon for hunting? With armor-piercing bullets? When was the last time you saw a deer with a flak jacket on? Seriously. This is what the argument is going on today. So I ask the question to you, is this the kind of America you want? I ask you collectively, and I ask you individually, because if it is, Newtown will be a weekly occurrence. And if you're comfortable living with that, then you should endorse it. But if you want to do something about change, I think you should. I think you should. We can do better. We don't have to worry about sending our 6-year-olds to school and worrying that something's going to happen to them. So these are the issues of the day, as you know, perhaps better than I. Whether it's the fiscal cliff or gun control, watch out and watch who's behind the legislation that is filed in Congress. Because I'll guarantee you it's about special interests. And the NRA being the most powerful, the pharmaceutical industry being the most powerful. There's a lot of groups that control a lot of politicians because of financial contributions. And it's not about what's best for the country, it's about what's best for getting reelected. You can do better than my generation. You really can. We failed. We have failed on gun control. We have failed on making our schools safe. We have really failed you. So, the message I hope you learn today is learn how to compromise. Understand the legislative process. Understand what goes into a bill. But watch your back about who's going to be controlling the money and the strings of the legislators in Congress today. Because you can do a lot better. You really can. So, I congratulate all of you for your participation. You got great futures. If you want to go to a great school, by the way, you might want to think about AIC. It's had a pretty good track record of electing mayors, and congressmen. I'm not saying we've all done a good job, but we did get elected. It's got to say something for the institution. So if you want a career in government, think about AIC. Think about AIC, but think about the bigger picture, about doing something for your city, for your town, for your country. Not as a group, necessarily, individually. Make a difference. I think you can, and I think you will. Thank you for your time.